Hey, I'm Noah.
Between us, we actually bought 11 books this week. Why so many? I forget what my name is, but you,
Adderall Jenkins.
Adderall Jenkins, Adam, I go by many names. I'm not sure which one is which. Don't really care.
Palatuna. Whatever. Okay. So, this is our final review of the week.
Resurrection Man.
So, should I describe a little about the character?
I think, yeah, sure, the premise of
Okay.
Resurrection Man.
So, Resurrection Man, I think, is an incredibly interesting premise for a superhero. In that, this guy, Resurrection Man, cannot die. Well, I mean, he could die, but he always comes back. He always resurrects. And every time he is resurrected, he comes back with a new superpower. And the superpower is always related somehow to the way that he dies. So if, like, for example, he dies in a burning building, he'll be resurrected sometime later and probably have some sort of pyrokinetic abilities. So, the story? Should I get into the story?
Sure, do you want to talk about that, or should I?
I'll talk about it. You did a lot of talking last episode.
Sure.
So, story of Resurrection Man, he wakes up in a morgue, and he's slowly kind of coming to terms with his senses. He feels metal. He tastes the metal of the morgue. He hears metallic noises and
There's some metal. It's
Yeah.
actually a joke in the book.
Yeah, it is. So we're kind of drawn into the character from how he's kind of coming to terms with his kind of new body and his new life, really. And we see that all the metal in the morgue, he is now resurrected with metallic powers, and he can control electromagnetic fields and all that. He's basically Magneto. And also,
What does he do?
he's kind of given a mission, I guess, every time he says that. I try to find the line. I used to wonder, where is it? I used to wonder where the compulsions came from. Each time I come back, I just have a new thing to do that I just have to do, a gut feeling I can't ignore. So, not only does he come back with new powers, but he comes back with a compulsion to do something.
Just because.
Just because. And this time, he's given a compulsion to catch a plane going to Portland, Oregon for no reason whatsoever. And on the plane, he comes across, should we say what it is?
I think that
It's not really a spoiler.
just mentioning who I don't think is that big a spoiler.
Well, he comes across an angel who is after his soul, which is some sort of precious soul that both heaven and hell want to possess for some reason. And it kind of turns into a chase scene where the angel wants to kill him and everybody on the plane that he's on, and Resurrection Man kind of tries to, get the angel off the plane, try to save everyone, which,
We're not going to talk about how it ends.
yeah,
But
but
then I am
and-
going to say, I think it's fair enough to say that he doesn't get caught and the series ends.
yeah,
But, and then as the story goes on, without getting into too much detail, there's a lot of people after him, including not only these angel folk, also the body doubles make an appearance. And it's odd, I didn't necessarily recognize them at first, but they are indeed the body doubles, as we did.
I kind of first thought they were devils who were after him because the angels make a note that the other side is after his soul too.
Yeah, so that is one thing that it's not made. Some things like that could have been probably made clearer, because if you're not necessarily familiar with the characters, then it might not be as certain what's going on. Although I'm sure that they'll end up getting into more detail about who they are as the series goes on. So I think that's a pretty good summary. Now, I think you liked it more, so maybe you should talk
Yeah,
about.
okay. I did like it. I thought that it opens up with a lot of questions, and questions that I thought were interesting questions. It's never explained how he keeps on coming back or why. He's obviously getting these compulsions to do things, but we're not being told by who, because it isn't heaven, because they want his soul, so they want him to die permanently. It isn't hell, probably. Um, and we don't know why he has this power, why he has these compulsions, and we're also wondering why why both heaven and hell kind of are after his soul. I'm guessing it doesn't have just some sort of um, innate value, just because that he does keep on coming back. So I think there is some sort of higher purpose for his soul that we're going to be maybe hinted at as we continue the series, and maybe he has to fight for heaven for some reason, or um, we're not really given an answer, and that's so great. I think there are all these questions that are being raised, and the character himself is so well written, and the way that we are kind of experiencing every time he is resurrected, we experience how he feels and what's going through his mind every time.
Yeah,
It's all very interesting, and I think we get an empathy with the character.
yeah. I would agree with that about the character. I think his narration boxes are probably the best part of the book that he's talking about. The sensation of coming back to life, and just he's looking at people in the airport. I think this is probably the best scene. He's looking at people, and he's just talking about what he can sense about them and who they are. One of the more interesting themes there, I think, is that he actually does. He has strong empathy with people. He does feel for other people who are much more fragile than he is, or whose souls are more fragile than his is. They die and don't come back, and he's definitely conflicted about that. And he does feel a need to protect them or to help them, which I think is very good. My problem with the book overall is that I don't think he really does very much to do that. I mean, he's not really a superhero. At least I'm not sure how the series is or was before the relaunch, but with this, it's really more. He's someone in very unusual circumstances. So while he may at times be heroic in his actions for the most part, there's a much larger idea going on. And Noah just pointed out to me the airline he's flying on, and this is very cool, is Lazarus Airlines. So I think that's kind of a brilliant, not brilliant, but a very interesting
Cameo.
little detail that I like. But for the most part, I think the things that kind of I found, if not disappointing, just kind of less exciting than they could have been, or less interesting, were that, on the one hand, Noah mentioned that there are a lot of questions that are brought up that we don't know why he can come back and all this stuff, and we don't know where he gets this calling from, this impulse to do certain things. My problem is that while they are interesting questions, I'm not sure that they're really being set up to be answered. I get the feeling that there are more things that we need to suspend our disbelief in order to accept, and I can accept them. I don't have a problem with them. But I think that when those are the only questions that we have, then it's really just not very intriguing, not very many things that we want to explore as the plot goes on. If there is a question, I think it's really, is everyone who's after him, is anyone going to catch him, and is he going to make his way out? But then I don't really think that this issue starts exploring that very much. I mean, the beginning, when we're getting introduced to him, seeing things from his perspective, that's great. I think he's a great character. But I just think that as far as the plot goes, it's kind of a, not a letdown, but it's just kind of falls flat, that it doesn't really start developing much of a plot. It introduces an idea, but doesn't really set the ball rolling. I think when we were talking before, I don't know if I could mention this very briefly, do you mind?
Go.
That I think there are two movies that I'm thinking of. One is North by Northwest, which is a really good Alfred Hitchcock movie. Cary Grant is the wrong man. It's a case of mistaken identity, but there are some very bad people who are after him, and he, just this innocent guy, this ordinary guy, needs to flee and escape and go on this big adventure. It's a very good movie. But I think that's a really good example of a chase plot, where it's just everyone's after someone. But I think that the problem is that even in a movie like that, the person who's being chased is constantly acting, as opposed to just having things happen to him.
Yeah, Resurrection Man is very reactionary.
Yeah.
But I do think that is because of who is chasing him. He is being chased by God, and he can't outwit God. He always knows what's coming.
Well, there's no mention. One thing I love about the DC universe, we will see demons, we will see angels, we will see gods of other religions, but the God is never really shown to us, because then how can Mr. Terrific be an atheist? That's actually been explored, I think. But now I do think that it makes sense for him to be reacting more than acting, but I just don't think that in terms of plot it makes for the best story. And the other movie that I thought of is a much worse movie. It's called The Prophecy, in which Christopher Walken tries to steal the most evil soul ever made. It gets trapped in the body of a little girl, and then everyone's kind of fighting over this soul. Some people are... Christopher Walken wants it, and there's some angels, and Satan appears, and there's this guy who's a priest who needs to defend it, and everyone's trying to defend the soul, and the soul is the MacGuffin. And if Resurrection Man is... his soul is more of a MacGuffin, which in the last half of the book it really is, then I think we just know far too little about the people who are after him.
Mhm.
And I mean, if you end up combining the soul as a MacGuffin and the chase plot, that could work. I'm not saying that in later issues nothing's going to come of it, but I think that this first issue just kind of falls a bit short of plot.
And while we're at comparing it to other things, I just want to make a recommendation. Neil Gaiman and what was the other guy's name? Terry Pratchett wrote a book called Good Omens. I recommend it. Go read it.
I don't know anything about that, so I'm going to ask him to tell me all about it when we're done with this.
Okay.
And I think moving on to the art, I think that's one of the other really good things about this book.
The art is very... It is good art.
I think just that drawing on the cover shows exactly what we're looking at.
Yeah, this is the quality, this is the style of the art in the book.
We are looking at just this gray, dank, stringy, really...
He looks gaunt.
Gaunt, and not just him, but just our environments and everything. Just this
They
really...
look kind of dead.
Sleazy. Just everything looks, yes, dead, sleazy, corpse-like,
but
disgusting, but not grotesque.
Yeah, and at the same time, this is how the book sees an angel, and the angel, it brings, color into it, but it's not necessarily light, It's kind of foreboding color.
And even when there is light going on, there is visually light being emitted in this panel, that doesn't really brighten the tone of it at all, because of, first off, what we're seeing, and then just the backdrop against which it's set. Wasp and Angel.
Yeah.
But, and overall, not only is it very consistent, but it really sets the tone. Just, also, there's this real sort of hopeless, deterministic despair to this guy. He's not a particularly happy camper. And other than the fact that he's just constantly dying, which I'm sure he doesn't like, it's his relationship to people. And so, yeah, I think we're also really seeing this world through his perspective in terms of just the style. And that, I think, does work really well, so I'm not going to criticize that.
Letter scale?
Yeah, where would you put this?
I'd put this at a B+. I really enjoyed it. Unlike Adam, I thought that I do like the questions. I think that they are good questions. I am curious to find out what happens and how it develops. I like the character, and I really like the setup. I think it's an interesting character with interesting abilities and an interesting story.
I would put it at a C. Again, I think the art is good. I think the character is done well. Not just that it's a good character, but that it's expressed very well. And I'm not saying I have no interest in where this is going at all. But at the same time, I think that the plot and really setting the story in motion does fall short. So, I mean, not terrible, not bad. It's good, but at the same time, not something that I would really write home about. Yeah, I don't regret reading it. I don't think that it's not worth reading, but I wouldn't go out of my way and recommend it.
I would recommend it.
Yeah. And I think that covers all of the
issues. All the issues this week, but there is one last thing. I'm not going to go that big into it because there's really nothing to go that deep into just quite yet. But I find it.
I could find it while you talk.
Here it is.
I found it.
Yep. So, in Resurrection Man, we see this character.
Mysterious glowing.
A mysterious red glowing, pink glowing figure. And this figure, or a figure very similar to it, appears in every comic that we have read so far during the New 52 relaunch. However, this is the first time that the character is really put in focus. In the other comics, it's kind of a Where's Waldo thing where you're looking for her or him.
Here, this character is actually in the foreground.
Yeah, and in the other books, you have to find him. He's not as obvious. Now, he is in every book that we've read so far, and it's just something to kind of point out and notice that.
Also, he's got Freddy Krueger hands. Hang on. Yeah, you see those hands? Those really long fingers. Actually, it's more like a rake hand, because they're not knives, they're just like rakes.
But
Yeah.
anyway, as I was getting to, he is in every book so far that we have read in the New 52 relaunch, and knowing DC and how they do stuff like this, he will probably play a big role in some sort of crossover, some sort of other big event. So if you notice him popping up, definitely keep an eye out for him in later comics.
Or it could be a red herring. Also, there is the question, is it one person or is it multiple people?
Well, some of them look like guys, some of them look like girls, some of them seem to have more facial hair, so I think it's some sort of order of something who want a thing to something. It's all very vague, especially because this is a reboot, and I don't want to say that it is a Crisis crossover, that they're going to kind of bring all the continuities in together again, because it's so soon after they just rebooted everything.
Where's Waldo Crisis?
But just it's something to keep in mind while reading the comics.
Maybe it's a cult that formed in response to the relaunch, and they're going to come together and try to use their powers to collectively force everyone in the world to contribute to the creation of a Justice Society of America comic.
Perhaps.
Yeah, because we don't have one of those. Anyway.
But it's just something to keep an eye out for, and something I wanted to bring into light.
Yeah. It's a question, if it's going to be answered, we're not sure, but it's definitely there to be noticed.
Yep. So that's it for this week.
And next week, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yep.
Do we want to talk about what we're going to be...
Well, let's look at the calendar here. DC has been very nice and provides...
They've provided a 2-page ad in every single comic detailing what's going to be coming out next.
Yep. So let me just find it. It's usually in the middle. There it is. So there it is.
So of what we have next week...
Next week is September 21st.
We'll be looking, of course, at Batman, #1, obviously.
Birds of Prey, #1.
Birds of Prey. I had a passing interest in Blue Beetle. Not sure if we'll be doing it. My concern with Blue Beetle is it's going to turn out to be when you get these sort of lower tier heroes, when they're not on a team situation, you run the risk of not being able to really sustain a series. But then that's almost more of a reason to look at it.
I'm not that interested in Captain Atom.
I am.
So
I'm just interested in the cover because he looks like Seth from Street Fighter. So
okay.
I'm definitely.
I want to pick up Catwoman.
Catwoman.
DC Universe Presents looks interesting.
Featuring Deadman.
Green Lantern Corps, I don't know. Legion of Superheroes, I don't know. Nightwing, I'm picking that one up. Red Hood and the Outlaws, I'll think about it. Supergirl, picking that one up, and we are going to do Wonder Woman.
Of course, and we will finally get to the bottom of her pants. Her ankles, of course. Bottom of the pants.
See you next week.